The Serengeti stretches out like a golden ocean, whispering tales of survival and love that only the wild can tell. Imagine Aleoa, Nia, her amber eyes glowing with a mother's fierce devotion, watching her philhote, Jabari, tumble through the grass. This isn't just another day in the savannah, it's the start of a story that'll grip your heart and make you believe in miracles. It's about instinto materno so powerful it defies the laws of nature, about compexo that bridges worlds, and a connexo that feels like a whisper from the universe. Stick with me, because Nia and Jabari's journey is gonna leave you speechless. Ready to feel the pulse of the wild? The sun hung low over the Serengeti, painting the sky in strokes of mango and lavender, as the savannah hummed with life. Nia, a Aleoa with a coat like burnished gold, lay sprawled on a warm boulder, her tail flicking lazily. Her philhote, Jabari, was a whirlwind of energy, his tiny paws kicking up dust as he chased a butterfly. The air smelled of dry grass and distant rain, a scent that felt like home to Nia. She watched him with a mix of pride and amusement, her heart swelling at his fearless curiosity. Who doesn't smile at a kid, furry or not, discovering the world? Jabari's eyes sparkled with mischief as he spotted a gnarled acacia tree, its branches low and inviting. He scampered toward it, letting out a squeaky roar that was more adorable than fierce. The savannah seemed to cheer him on, the rustle of leaves, the chatter of weaver birds, all part of the morning's symphony. Nia's ears twitched, catching every sound, her instinto materno always on alert. Jabari clambered onto the lowest branch, his little body wobbling with effort. Wasn't there something magical about watching him test his limits? The tree stood like an ancient sentinel, its bark rough under Jabari's paws, etched with stories of countless seasons. He stretched for a higher branch, his tiny claws scraping against the wood, determined to conquer his Everest. Nia lifted her head, her gaze softening. She'd climbed trees like that once, hadn't she? The breeze carried a faint whiff of wild mint, sharp and refreshing, as if the savannah itself was holding its breath. Jabari's tail wagged like a metronome, his joy infectious. But could a cub so small really make it to the top? Halfway up, Jabari paused, panting, his chest heaving with excitement. The world below looked bigger, wilder, and he let out a triumphant yip that echoed across the plain. Nia's whiskers quivered with a chuckle. Oh, this kid was trouble, the best kind. The sun's warmth wrapped them both, a golden embrace that made the moment feel eternal. Yet, in the distance, a soft rumble of thunder stirred, too faint to notice but heavy with promise. Would this perfect morning stay perfect for long? As Jabari reached for another branch, the tree creaked, a low groan that blended with the savannah's chorus. Nia's ears flicked forward, a prickle of unease stirring in her chest. The air felt heavier now, charged with something unspoken. Jabari, oblivious, pushed upward, his tiny body a blur of courage and innocence. The Serengeti watched in silencio, as if it knew something Nia didn't. What was it about that moment that felt like the calm before a storm? The Serengeti held its breath as a sudden gust swept across the plain, sharp with the tang of oncoming rain. Jabari, perched precariously on the acacia's gnarled branch, didn't notice the shift. His world was all claws and conquest. The branch swayed, groaning louder now, a warning lost in the philhote's eager yips. Nia's amber eyes narrowed, her instinto materno screaming something was wrong. The air crackled with a restless energy, like the savannah itself was trying to speak. Could a moment so full of life turn sour so fast? Jabari stretched for the next branch, his tiny body trembling with effort, when the wind howled again, fierce and unforgiving. A sickening crack split the air, louder than thunder, as the branch gave way beneath him. Time seemed to freeze. Nia's heart lurched as Jabari's paws flailed, his squeak of triumph twisting into a yelp of fear. He plummeted, a small blur against the golden grass, landing with a dull thud that echoed in Nia's bones. Wasn't it just a second ago he'd been king of the world? The savannah fell into an eerie silencio, broken only by the faint rustle of leaves settling around Jabari's crumpled form. Nia was at his side in an instant, her paws pounding the earth, her breath hot and ragged. The scent of dust and blood stung her nose, a cruel contrast to the morning's wild mint. Jabari's chest heaved unevenly, each gasp laced with dor, his once bright eyes clouded with confusion. Who hasn't felt that gut punch of seeing someone you love hurt? Nia nosed her Philhote gently, her tongue rasping over his matted fur, desperate to soothe him. His whimpers were faint, like the last notes of a fading song, and each one carved a deeper wound in her heart. The acacia loomed above, its broken branch a jagged reminder of how quickly joy could turn to a moko raw and unyielding. Nia's tail lashed, her mind racing, stay here or seek help? The savannah offered no answers, only the distant call of a jackal, cold and mocking. Could she trust her instincts to guide her now? Jabari's breathing grew shallower, each inhale a battle for sobrevivencia, and Nia's resolve hardened like the sun-baked earth. She licked his face, tasting the salt of her own tears mingling with his fur, and let out a low, trembling growl. The wind had softened, carrying a faint whiff of wet stone, as if the universe was nudging her forward. She couldn't lose him, not her Jabari, her spark of Esperanza. But what could Aleoa do against a wound she couldn't see? The horizon glowed faintly, where the ranger camp lay miles away, a place Nia had always avoided. Humans were danger, weren't they? Yet something stirred in her, a flicker of trust born of desperation. She crouched, nudging Jabari's limp body onto her back, her muscles straining under his weight. The savannah watched, its silence heavy with anticipation. Would Nia's love be enough to rewrite the rules of the wild? The Serengeti shimmered under a sky bruised with storm clouds, the air thick with the musky scent of damp earth. Nia, the Leoa, trudged forward, her Philhote Jabari draped across her back, his shallow breaths a fragile rhythm against her spine. Each step was a battle, her paws sank into the softening ground, her muscles burned, but her instinto materno roared louder than any storm. The savannah stretched endlessly, its tall grasses swaying like a sea of whispers, urging her on. Didn't it feel like the whole world was rooting for her? Jabari's weight grew heavier with every mile, his warmth fading against Nia's fur, a cruel reminder of time slipping away. The distant hum of cicadas pulsed in her ears, sharp and relentless, mirroring the panic clawing at her heart. She'd never ventured this close to the human camp before, those strange, upright creatures with their rumbling machines. Yet, something deeper than fear, a flicker of Esperanza, pushed her toward the unknown. Could a mother's love really bend the rules of the wild? The terrain shifted, the grass giving way to patches of cracked clay that stung Nia's pads like hot coals. A lone baobab tree loomed ahead, its twisted branches clawing at the sky, as if marking the edge of her world. She paused, panting, her tongue tasting the metallic tang of dust and sweat. Jabari stirred, letting out a faint whimper that sliced through her like a thorn. Who hasn't felt that desperate need to fix what's broken, no matter the cost? Nia's eyes scanned the horizon, catching a faint glow where the ranger camp flickered like a distant star. The scent of smoke and unfamiliar spices drifted on the breeze, alien yet strangely comforting, like a promise of compexo. She adjusted Jabari's limp form, her jaws gentle but firm, and pressed on, her heart pounding with a mix of dread and confianza. The savannah seemed to hold its breath, the rustle of leaves falling silent. Was this journey madness, or a miracle in the making? The ground sloped downward now, the path growing treacherous with loose pebbles that skittered underfoot. Nia's tail flicked nervously, her senses razor-sharp as the camp's outline sharpened, a cluster of tents, the glint of metal. The air carried a low hum, not of nature but of human life, and it sent a shiver through her. Jabari's breathing faltered, a stuttering gasp that made her chest ache with dor. Could she trust these strangers with her cub's life? As Nia crested a low hill, the camp came into full view, its lanterns casting pools of light that danced across the earth. She froze, her golden eyes reflecting the glow, torn between the wild's warnings and a mother's desperate plea. The wind sighed, carrying the faint scent of rain-soaked leather, as if the universe was nudging her one last time. She took a step forward, then another, her heart whispering that this was her only chance. What would happen when Aleoa stepped into the world of men? The ranger camp glowed like a cluster of fireflies against the Serengeti's darkening sky, its lanterns swaying in the restless breeze. Nia, the Leoa, stood frozen at the hill's crest, Jabari's limp form heavy across her shoulders, his faint breaths barely stirring her fur. The air buzzed with unfamiliar scents, burnt coffee, motor oil, and the sharp sting of antiseptic, alien to the savannah's earthy embrace. Her golden eyes darted, taking in the silhouettes of humans moving between tents. Could she, a creature of the wild, really ask these strangers for a Judah? A low growl rumbled in Nia's throat, more fear than threat, as she took a cautious step forward. The ground crunched under her paws, littered with pebbles and the faint glitter of bottle caps, a stark contrast to the savanna's soft grasses. A young ranger, Daniel, froze mid-step, his flashlight beam catching Nia's eyes like twin moons. The camp fell silent, the crackle of a campfire the only sound, as Human and Leo locked gazes. Who hasn't felt that electric moment when two worlds collide? Nia's heart pounded, her instinto maternal warring with the wild's warnings, but Jabari's weakening pulse urged her on. She lowered her head, gently sliding her Philhote to the ground, his body curling into a small, vulnerable heap. Daniel's breath hitched. He'd seen lions before, but never one pleading. The air seemed to hum with Connexo, a silent understanding that felt like a gift from the universe. Would this human see her desperation for what it was? Daniel crouched slowly, his movements deliberate, his voice a soft murmur that blended with the night's chorus of crickets. "Easy, girl," he whispered, as if soothing a spooked horse. Nia's ears flicked, catching the warmth in his tone, and she stayed rooted, her tail still, her eyes never leaving Jabari. The scent of Daniel's sweat, earthy and human, mingled with the camp's smoky haze, grounding her in this surreal moment. Could this be the Compexo she'd gambled everything to find? The other rangers gathered, their whispers sharp with awe and caution, but Daniel waved them back, his focus unwavering. He knelt beside Jabari, his hands hovering over the cub's matted fur, assessing the door etched in his shallow breaths. Nia's muscles tensed, but she didn't move. Something in Daniel's steady gaze spoke of Empatia, a bridge between their worlds. The lantern light cast long shadows, dancing like spirits watching over them. What would it take for this fragile trust to hold? Nia let out a soft huff, her breath warm against the cooling air, as if sealing an unspoken pact. Daniel's eyes met hers again, and for a heartbeat, the Serengeti faded. There was only a mother, a child, and a stranger choosing to help. The camp's hum resumed, a generator's drone weaving into the night, but the moment felt sacred, untouched by the ordinary. Was this the turning point where hope could finally take root? The ranger camp pulsed with a nervous energy, its lanterns casting a warm glow over the scene unfolding on the dusty ground. Daniel knelt beside Jabari, the Philhote's shallow breaths barely lifting his tiny chest, while Nia, the Leoa, watched with eyes like burning coals. The air was thick with the sharp bite of iodine and the faint sweetness of lantern oil, a strange blend that clung to the back of Daniel's throat. His hands moved carefully, probing Jabari's ribs, feeling for breaks under the matted fur. Could he pull this cub back from the edge with Nia's gaze boring into him? Nia's tail twitched, her muscles coiled, but she stayed still, her instinto materno tethered to an unshakable confianza in this human. The camp's sounds, a ranger's hushed radio, the creak of a tent flap, faded into a tense silencio, as if the Serengeti itself was holding its breath. Daniel's fingers found a swollen bruise, and Jabari whimpered, a sound that twisted Nia's heart and made Daniel wince. "Hang in there, little guy," he murmured, his voice soft as the night's cooling breeze. Who hasn't felt the weight of trying to fix something so fragile? Daniel reached for a medical kit, its metal clasp clicking sharply in the quiet, and pulled out bandages and a syringe of painkiller. The scent of sterile gauze mixed with the camp's smoky undertones, grounding him as he worked. Nia's ears flicked at each movement, her golden fur catching the lantern light like a halo. She let out a low huff, not a growl but a plea, as if urging the Kura to come faster. Wasn't it humbling, how a wild creature could trust so completely? The other rangers stood back, their faces etched with awe and apprehension, their boots scuffing softly against the earth. Daniel injected the painkiller, his hands steady despite the sweat beading on his brow, and Jabari's whimpers softened, his body relaxing slightly. The air seemed to lighten, carrying a faint whiff of eucalyptus from a nearby salve, as if Esperanza was seeping into the moment. Nia's eyes never left her Philhote, but they softened, reflecting a flicker of gratitude. Could this be the miracle she'd crossed the savannah for? Daniel wrapped Jabari's chest in bandages, his fingers gentle but sure, each motion a silent promise to Nia. The cub's breathing steadied, a slow rhythm that felt like a victory, though his eyes remained closed, lost in a haze of door. The camp's generator hummed in the distance, a steady pulse that matched the growing calm. Nia shifted closer, her nose brushing Jabari's ear, her warmth a shield against the night's chill. What did it mean for a human and a Lioa to share such a fragile hope? As Daniel finished, he sat back, wiping his hands on his dusty jeans, his heart heavy with the weight of what he'd just done. Nia's gaze met his, and for a moment, the emoco was overwhelming, a connexo that transcended words, species, everything. The stars above glittered, brighter now, as if the universe was nodding in approval. Jabari stirred, a tiny paw twitching, and Nia's tail curled protectively around him. Was this the moment where life won, or was the fight far from over? The Serengeti exhaled as dawn crept over the horizon, its first rays gilding the ranger camp in a soft, hopeful light. Nia, the Lioa, lay curled around Jabari, her Philhote's bandaged chest rising steadier now, each breath a small victory against the door that had nearly claimed him. The air carried the crisp scent of dew-soaked grass, mingling with the fading tang of antiseptic, as if natureza itself was stitching the night's wounds. Daniel sat nearby, his dusty boots crossed, watching the pair with a quiet awe. Could a moment feel so sacred, so impossibly right, after such a desperate fight? Jabari stirred, his tiny paw flexing against Nia's fur, and a faint mewl escaped him, weak, but alive with promessa. Nia's tongue rasped gently over his ears, her golden eyes shimmering with an emoco too deep for roars. The camp was waking, the clink of a coffee pot and the murmur of rangers blending with the savannah's morning chorus of doves. Daniel's heart swelled. He'd seen Sobrevivencia before, but this was different, a vinculo forged in trust and compexo. Who hasn't been moved by a second chance that feels like a gift? Nia lifted her head, her gaze locking with Daniel's, and for a heartbeat, the world shrank to just them, a Lioa, a ranger, and a cub who'd defied the odds. The breeze stirred, carrying the faint perfume of blooming acacias, sweet and fleeting, like a whisper of gratideo from the universe. She let out a soft rumble, not a growl but a sound that vibrated with warmth, echoing through the camp like a melody. The other rangers paused, their faces softening, as if they felt it too. Wasn't it something, how a wild heart could speak so clearly? Jabari's eyes fluttered open, cloudy but brighter, and he nuzzled Nia's side, his tiny body seeking her warmth. The sight hit Daniel like a wave, his throat tightening with the weight of what they'd done together. The camp's lanterns flickered out, no longer needed in the growing light, and the air hummed with the buzz of flies and the distant bark of a baboon. Nia's tail curled tighter around her Philhote, her strength a quiet promise to never let go. Could this be the moment where love proved stronger than the wild's harsh rules? Daniel stood, brushing dirt from his jeans, and took a step back, giving Nia space to reclaim her world. The savannah stretched beyond the camp, its golden grasses swaying under a sky now clear of storms, as if celebrating their triumph. Nia nosed Jabari gently, urging him to his feet, and he wobbled, his legs shaky but stubborn. The rangers watched in silencio, their breaths held, as the cub took a trembling step. Didn't it make you believe in miracles, seeing life fight back like that? Nia's ears flicked, catching the familiar pulse of the Serengeti, the rustle of leaves, the call of a distant hyena, and she knew it was time. She scooped Jabari onto her back, her movements tender but sure, and turned toward the wild. The air shimmered with the scent of sun-warmed earth, grounding her as she stepped past the camp's edge. Daniel raised a hand, not a wave but a quiet farewell, his eyes tracing the Lioa's path. What did it mean to let go of a moment that changed you forever? As Nia melted into the tall grasses, her silhouette blending with the savannah's golden haze, she paused, glancing back one last time. Her eyes met Daniel's, and she let out a final, low roar, soft, resonant, a sound that carried all the gratideo words could never hold. The Serengeti seemed to answer, its winds whispering through the acacias, as if sealing their story into its ancient heart. Jabari's tiny head lifted, his gaze bright with new strength, and they vanished into the wild. Wasn't it beautiful, how some bonds linger long after the footprints fade? The camp returned to its rhythm, but Daniel stood rooted, staring at the horizon where Nia and Jabari had gone. The memory of their trust, their fight, burned in his chest, a reminder that Ampasia could bridge even the wildest divides. The savannah stretched on, endless and alive, its beauty sharper now, as if Nia had left a piece of her spirit behind. Could a single night really shift the way you saw the world? And there you have it, a story of a Leoa who broke every rule of Natureza to save her Filhote, and a ranger who answered her plea with a heart full of Compexo. Nia and Jabari showed us that love, trust, and Esperanza can weave miracles, even in the wild's toughest moments. Sometimes, the greatest teachers have 4 paws and a roar that speaks to your soul. So, what about you? Have you ever had an animal change your life with a look, a nudge, or a bond that felt like fate? Drop your story in the comments, we can't wait to hear it. And if this tale touched you, give it a like and subscribe for more stories that remind us why the wild is so darn magical.